this yesterday in terms of a tweet, but he's actually written a piece on it. Eliot Cohen. And I don't cite this because he's not someone I would necessarily... I don't necessarily have any appreciation for this guy or his work. But if we want to get a sense of what's going on and what's going to happen with this transition team, like I've been saying about Donald Trump, there's really 2 or 3 different types of concerns that we should have. One is the Mike Pence concern. Assuming for a moment that Donald Trump, decided I don't want to do this anymore. And he just moves to some Caribbean island. And Mike Pence is the president. We have got a whole host of conservative measures that are going to fundamentally undermine the safety net, the regulatory state, individual rights, particularly curtailment of rights of women. Who knows? Stop and frisk. I mean, who knows? All of that is one sort of subset of concerns. The other subset of concern is that we have the least experienced, most emotionally unstable person we've had at least in a century, maybe more, who is now the president of the United States, with a team surrounded by a team of people who are equally know-nothing and unstable. To the point of they were missing meetings with the energy department. Those are the people who are in charge of the nukes, incidentally. They're missing meetings with the Pentagon. And their ability, according to the New York Times, they've asked Obama staffers, can you recommend anybody who's a Republican who does your job? I mean, think about this for a moment. I think the metaphor I was given, I don't know if I said this on air yesterday, but it was, I got to have John Benjamin come into the studio and say, John, you're a well-known voice guy. You're Archer. You're Bob on Bob's Burgers. Here's the desk, man. We're out of here. Do a podcast in 10 minutes. And incidentally, in 15 minutes, you got to warn people about the tsunami that's coming. Just wouldn't know where to start. Not enough time to get up to speed. There's going to be...
He'd been demanding a podcast for 2 years.
Right.
With zero preparation.
I mean, contemplate this. We have someone who doesn't know what they're doing. Whether or not they can actually launch the administration, when you go beyond that, there's going to be just a rolling series of problems. So you have one in terms of the dysfunction of the government, but I also want you to contemplate this, that to the extent that there are rivals or enemies of America in the world who have aspirations that run contrary to what they perceive as American interests, when do you think they would start to pursue those things? So the first 6 months of that administration, first year of that administration, we could see some very volatile things happening. And then the question is how does this volatile, unhinged guy who may or may not have any expertise in his administration respond to this? Why do I say he may not have any expertise in the administration? This guy, Eliot Cohen, who I, again, not terribly interested in. Neoconish guy from the GW administration. Writes in, I think this is the Times of the Washington Post, author of the forthcoming Big Stick, Limits of Soft Power and the Necessity of Military Force. He was a counselor of the State Department in 2007, 2009. I'm a national security never-Trumper who, after the election, made the case that young conservatives should volunteer to serve in the new administration. Warily, their undated letters of resignation ready. That advice, I have concluded, was wrong. Now, he goes on to talk about how personal relationship, I was brought in there, blah, blah, blah. I'm going to skip ahead. The tenor of the Trump team, from everything I see, read, and hear, is such that for a garden variety Republican policy specialist, service in the early phase of this administration would carry a high risk of compromising one's integrity and reputation. In a normal transition to a normal administration, there's always disorder. There's the presidential friends and second cousins, the flacks, the hangers-on who flame out in the first year or two. There are the bad choices, the abusive bosses. Even if you're just blocking errors, it's a contribution. This time may be different. Trump was not a normal candidate. The transition is not a normal transition, and this will probably not be a normal administration. The president-elect is surrounding himself with mediocrities whose chief qualifications seem to be unquestioning loyalty. He gets credit for becoming a statesman when he says something any newly elected president might say. Parens, I very much look forward to dealing with the president in the future. And then reverts to tweeting against demonstrators in the New York Times. By all accounts, his ignorance and that of his entourage about the executive branch is fathomless. It's not even clear he accepts that he should live in the White House rather than his guilt-smeared penthouse in New York. Look, the bottom line is
flair, huh?
whether or not even you take this guy at his word that there's a fundamental problem with the transition and the Trump administration, and it's not just that they said, you're not going to be ahead of whatever you think you're going to be ahead of when you come in here. And he got offended. This guy's putting out the call. Like, it's becoming toxic for people to get near that administration, which means the level of expertise is going to be very, very low. I got news for you. Aside from being what Jeremy Scahill calls the most powerful Christian fundamentalist in the country, Mike Pence is no brain surgeon. And speaking of which,
I mean, I don't know.
Well, here's the point. If you really think, is it impossible for a total incompetent to have run for president and then taken the office? Like, why would he do that? I give you the good doctor, Ben Carson, who announced that he was not going to accept any position in the White House administration because he doesn't feel like he's up to the task of running an agency. So either he thought that he could just run the whole thing because that would be easier. I'm more of like a 30,000-foot guy. I'm not so much a get into the federal actual run a department guy. I'm more like an idea. Wasn't the thing like an idea thing?
I'm an ideas man.
Or he was only interested in the grift in the first place. It's probably more likely. Or he's looking into this administration even after doing all the work for Trump all the way up and going, even I can see a disaster.
Or D, all of the above, motherfucker. I ain't in that. That whole thing's going to be a complete, utter mess. And I've already got cha-ching, 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 cha-ching.
There you go. Hey, it's Sam Seder. Why don't you subscribe to this channel? You can do so right over here. Over. Subscribe.